There's a big story out there today, the Lockerbie Bomber story. And for those of you that don't really know about this, the bomber did not blow up Lockerbie. The bomber blew up a Pan Am 747 over Lockerbie, and it happened to crash in Lockerbie. And that's why it's called a Lockerbie Bomber, but he blew up a Boeing 747. We have the Obama administration. Last Tuesday afternoon, Obama talking with Prime Minister David Cameron, joint presser. And Mimi Hall from USA Today got up and read the following question. It was given to her by David Axelrod. President Obama, how do you feel about a congressional investigation into this Lockerbie bombing stuff? I mean, would you like to see that happen, or do you think that that confuses the two events?
I think all of us here in the United States were surprised, disappointed, and angry about the release of the Lockerbie bomber. And my administration expressed very clearly our objections prior to the decision being made and subsequent to the decision being made.
Well, that's just not true, because the White House privately backed the release of the Lockerbie bomber. That's right. This is from the Australian, published today. The U.S. government secretly advised Scottish ministers it would be far preferable to free the Lockerbie bomber than to jail him in Libya. Correspondence obtained by the Sunday Times reveals the Obama regime considered compassionate release more palatable than locking up the bomber in a Libyan prison. The intervention, which has angered U.S. relatives of those who died in the attack, was made by Richard LeBaron, the deputy head of the U.S. Embassy in London, a week before the bomber was freed in August last year on grounds that he had terminal cancer, from which he's apparently recovered. The document, acquired by a well-placed U.S. source, threatens to undermine Obama's claim last week that all Americans were surprised, disappointed, and angry to learn of the bomber's release. Scottish ministers viewed the level of U.S. resistance to compassionate release as half-hearted and a sign that it would be accepted. So the regime, this is big, folks. I think it's as big, if not bigger, than the WikiLeaks thing. The WikiLeaks thing, can we now call this the Democrats' war? They wanted it. From the first day we went into Iraq, they wanted to focus on Afghanistan. This is Obama's war. Can we now call it Obama's? Yes, we can, and we will do so accurately. I still don't know what to call these people. They're not media. The flacks for the ruling class will, of course, not call it Obama's war, but it clearly is. White House backed release of Lockerbie, the bomber. Now, remember ClimateGate. Let's put all this in perspective. ClimateGate was a story because emails got out that were meant to remain hidden from public view forever. Information about the White House backing the release of the Lockerbie bomber was never supposed to see the light of day either. But it has. This is the same regime that desperately wants to try Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in New York City. The same regime that wants NASA to help Muslims feel better about themselves in math and science. The same regime that has not said a word about a mosque at Ground Zero, which is opposed by, I think, even 71% of New Yorkers and throughout the country. A mosque at Ground Zero is meant as a monument to our defeat. And we have a bunch of politically correct cowards who are afraid to stand up to this and say, no, because we still feel somehow the need to reach out, to have understanding with militants in the Islamic world. So we've got a mosque, and in Ground Zero, the regime has not spoken out against it. They want to try Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in New York City. They want NASA to reach out to Muslims. The same regime that has spent millions of American taxpayer dollars supporting a constitutional referendum in Kenya, legalizing abortion there. The same regime that looked the other way when the Iranian people had an opportunity to take their freedom back. The same regime that has done nothing to stop Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. The same regime that has beat up on Israel like a rented mule. The same regime that lied about backing the release of the Muslim terrorist the world knows as the Lockerbie Bomber. We now know that the administration backed the release of the bomber. Now, for those of you new to the program, never forget these two simple words: liberals lie. That's all you ever have to know. To understand them, you must look at them ideologically. You must look at Obama and every Democrat ideologically, because that's what they are. Before the Lockerbie bombshell, some recent history. To give the story context, this is the Politico, July 20th. I think all of us here in the United States were surprised, disappointed, angry. Here, play the soundbite again. It's number 22. This Obama, we now know, the administration backed very privately, and by not objecting at all to the release of the Lockerbie bomber. This is Obama last Tuesday.
I think all of us here in the United States were surprised, disappointed, and angry about the release of the Lockerbie bomber. And my administration expressed very clearly our objections prior to the decision being made and subsequent to the decision being made.
It just isn't true. Now, the Obama connection to the Lockerbie bomber release only came out accidentally. It wasn't because of our so-called news media. They ignored it. It was U.S. Democrats who were flailing around for something to attack BP over that uncovered this. The liberal Democrats in this country wanting to savage BP over the oil leak discovered that the Obama regime supported the release of the Lockerbie bomber. And they were searching around for something to attack BP over after the leak had been capped. The leak got capped too soon to be useful for this election cycle, the American left. So they started digging for dirt, and they found this. The U.S. media didn't find it, and they wouldn't have reported if they had. This is reported in Australia. And their cries for an investigation into BP's involvement has come back to bite them on the backside. Somebody leaking Obama's memo. Somebody in the UK has leaked Obama's memo supporting the release of the Lockerbie bomber. It was the Democrats are Frank Lautenberg, Robert Menendez of New Jersey, Charles Schumer of New York, and Kristen Gillibrand of New York, who called for this investigation of BP that released or revealed in the memo that the Obama regime supported the release. Now, I can imagine a lot of you say, Rush, why? Why? Why would the Obama administration, why would the regime want to support the early release of the Lockerbie bomber?